Hey, what's going on everybody, and welcome back to the Whiskey Cove. And on today's episode, we talk a little bit about liquor stores. Why are they all closing? What's kind of going on in whiskey right now and bourbon in the United States? What does that mean for liquor stores? What does that mean for distilleries? But most importantly, what does that mean for you? You know the drill, folks. Folks, welcome back as always to another new and exciting episode here on the Whiskey Cove, where we will be discussing why are liquor stores closing, some of the statistics behind whiskey sales right now and liquor sales across the board, and then ultimately, what does the future look like for whiskey drinkers like us? Before we get into today's video, we are running a charity fundraiser. It's $10 a person, $10 per ticket I should say. We have a bunch of great bottles. All the information is down in the description below. After this video, definitely go check that out. All the money that we raise goes to St. Jude Charity Hospital and Research Facility that you guys, or you folks at home, decided on, which I'm super happy to be supporting here. We're having a couple of new bottles in that we're going to be adding to it soon, so definitely get involved with that. Secondly, if you are in the Kentucky or surrounding areas, on Tuesday, August 6th at 3 o'clock at Doc Crow's, I will put the information on the screen and in the description below, we are doing like a co-subscriber meetup. Me and that bourbon dude are just gonna hang out before we do our live stream. Hoping to see a couple of your faces there, touch base and just talk and have some good whiskey and share some awesome stories. So if you'd like to be a part of that, definitely just come down and check it out then. With that being said, let's delve headfirst into today's videos, shall we? So, something that I've noticed here in Colorado is that recently, over the last few months, we've had two major liquor stores close their doors. So we have Total Beverage. They have two locations, a Westminster one and a Thornton one. They just closed their Thornton location, which is like 44,000 square feet. This is no store, a small store we're talking about here. A very big store. And then also Lucas Wine and Spirits in Denver, which is also equally as big, closed its doors for the last time after many years of business. So that kind of prompted me, like, what is going on? You go online, you go on Facebook groups, whiskey groups, and YouTube, and everybody's talking about the whiskey market kind of nosediving here a little bit. So I wanted to make a video. I wanted to do it based upon statistics, and I wanted to do it based upon my own research and my own opinion here. So, with that being said, let's talk a little bit about the real statistics and kind of what is going on in the spirits industry right now. So, if we take a little look at this website that I use for this. So this is going to be called Statista. So this is a very common website, a very popular website. They do a great job at just about getting statistics for everything. They go ahead and get all that information and plug it into some really nice and easy graphs to make. So first off, let's look at about volume. So volumes of alcoholic drinks sold in the US by year, and then they also come up with a projected volume for the forthcoming years. So if we look back from 2018, we can see that the volume was at 24.1 billion liters of alcohol sales in the US. 2020, it took a big rise because what happened in 2020? We had COVID, we had people staying at home a little bit more. Really, we had people probably self-medicating with alcohol in what was a pretty hard time for a lot of us. And also, we were well in the full swing of the whiskey boom at that point. So they jumped up to 26.3 billion. 2021, it jumped up to 26.6 billion. 2022, it plateaued a little bit and it held at 26.6 billion. And then last year's statistic was 26.2 billion. That was the first fall off for a long time. So it's projected in 2024 that alcohol sales by volume will fall off once again, and that will continue for the rest of the decade. Obviously, this is based upon data that this website was able to attend and market trends, but it does look like volume, people are buying less alcohol. But what does that mean in terms of money? Are people spending less on alcoholic drinks or alcohol in the US? Let's take a little look here. So, this website is not able to separate out specific spirits, but what it does do, it can separate out beer, cider, perry rice wine, hard seltzer spirits, so hard spirits as a whole. And then it comes together and adds them up. So in $1 billion in the US, in 2020, it was $155.8 billion was spent. And going up then quite considerably in 2021, that jumped to 164 billion. In 2022, 170 billion. And then 2023, when it was supposed to plateau, it jumped up to 180.9 billion, which is a big jump. And then 2024 is predicted to jump up even more to 184.1. And furthermore, if we look at the graph and we can see that it breaks down spirits into this yellow and orange bar, we still see that steady increase in price. So it's not just alcoholic beverages across the board, it's spirits specifically too. So people are willing to spend more money on less product. And we know that in science, correlation doesn't mean causation. So if we kind of assume, based upon some of the statistics that we have, yes, money and inflation has gone up, so that definitely plays a part. Your bottle of Eagle Red is not 28 bucks anymore, you know, it's more like $40 and maybe then some in the end. And on this website, they also talk a little bit about their analyst's opinion. And I think we should read that. So they're looking at this analyst's opinion and specifically on trends in the market. It goes on to say that a trend in the market is the alcoholic drinks market is growing popularity of spirits, particularly whiskey. Whiskey consumption has been on the rise in recent years, driven by a combination of factors including the rise of craft distilleries, increased interest in mixology and cocktails, and the perception of whiskey as a sophisticated and premium drink. This trend is also reflected in the growing number of whiskey bars and tasting events across the country. So this market analyst doesn't go on to think that the market is really in any sort of crisis right now. So what I think is just everybody's kind of adjusting post-COVID. So a lot of these liquor stores, and this was kind of maybe a little bit of a false dawn for them. So during 2020, when liquor sales absolutely boomed across the board on just about every alcoholic beverage, they had a lot of money and they probably wanted to reinvest in the store. And one thing that you didn't see that many of, yes, you probably still seen a decent amount, but not everybody had that. And that was specific single barrels to different distilleries. And that is what's happened. That's been the main difference throughout the last few years, is that just about every liquor store seems to have their own selection of single barrels. So it used to be just a handful of stores would have single barrels and you could get a bottle and it would be so unique. It would be the talk of a party. It would be so sophisticated. But now it's just not as much of a cool thing to do anymore. I go to liquor stores here in Colorado. I see Elijah Craig barrel-proof single barrels sitting on shelves all the time. Multiple other single barrels, like a Smoke Wagon, private select bottles that on black markets will go to like $500 to $1,000. They can't get rid of them at $100. Angel's Envy, private selection single barrels, just sitting. They just can't move them whatsoever. We're talking about whiskey though. It may be in 2020, it will sell just like that. So with that, all the liquor stores that spent a lot of money on these single barrels, and the two aforementioned stores earlier on, Total Beverage and Lucas Wine and Spirits, big stores. They had a big array of single barrels. So let's take this into account. Let's try to do a little bit of math here. So one barrel says on average 200 bottle yield. If you got maybe a Smoke Wagon barrel, that is about a $100 bottle there. That's about a $20,000 outlay. Maybe you sell a quarter of that. That comes down to $15,000 sitting there in tied up money. That's for one barrel. You multiply that by 10, 150,000. You multiply that, more than that, it's a lot of money. That is too much more, much more money to be just sitting around tied up in these single barrels. You can't get rid of the stuff. It's there. Maybe you have to cut costs and mark it down to ask, or mark it down to whatever they paid for it. And that's not a good business model. And at the same time, people are asking for new and different single barrels, and you're trying to keep up with everybody, and it's just not selling. That amount of money is just not going to work in that business model, which is why a lot of these liquor stores are finding it hard. That, coupled with the fact that some of these liquor stores have found it very hard to be able to manage their allocated whiskey. I know specifically one of the two stores that I mentioned, a lot of the whiskey tended to go out the back door, whether that was the staff or whether that was managers or them getting rid of that for the price that they could, that would suit the store or themselves more. Because there's a lot of greed around whiskey right now. We have these fantastic whiskey communities, Whiskey Cove being one of them. I enjoy spending time with you in the chat. Thank you for the patrons here. Multiple different groups here across Facebook where people share absolute great stories about making new friends, supporting charities, and really great things. But when there's money to be made, there was always criminal interest. And what we're seeing now is either liquor stores are just not even putting whiskey out on the shelves and they're just selling it themselves through black markets. or friends of owners and people who are just in it to make money will go to different liquor stores, buy up as much bottles as they can and just try to sell them. So for whiskey drinkers like you and me, who want to enjoy the spirit for what it is, we can't find any of the good stuff. And obviously I'm very fortunate that I've been drinking whiskey and bourbon for a decent amount of time. And even before a lot of this boom, I was able to forge good relationships with liquor store owners here. And that has gone down quite well for me. And I'm quite fortunate and humbled that I have that. But even though of late I've been having a little bit more difficulty with that, but that's a story for another time. However, for a lot of people during COVID and whatnot, who were just getting into whiskey, they found it incredibly hard. A subscriber messaged me today and said that they don't spend that much money. Maybe they spend, if they're lucky, $200 a month at a liquor store, which is a lot of money. But that's nothing compared to the thousands and thousands of dollars that folks are spending at liquor stores for like maybe a company, or maybe they're getting it to resell. People just can't keep up with them. This was another interesting story. So CNN reported in 2023 that they run a little bit of they made a story about Brown-Forman and about kind of Brown-Forman's statistics for the first half of the year in 2023. So Brown-Forman, the maker of several spirits, including Jack Daniel's whiskey, fell 1% in the first half of last year's current fiscal year, which is a sharp contrast to 9% the last year. So overall sales of whiskey for Woodford went down 3%, and then Old Forester dropped 5%, which in the same time of the year before, Premium Barons jumped 39%. It's really interesting to see that Jack Daniel's Apple in the same time period increased to 50%. So what we're seeing is the whiskey sales, and even that market analyst was able to say here, is that liquor sales are still increasing. People are still willing to spend money. But if we talk a little bit more about and dive into it about bourbon specifically, that's kind of fallen off. People want maybe the more fruitier stuff, and this is the opinion piece here. People maybe wanting more of the fruitier stuff, maybe more of the fun stuff, and we're seeing that tequila has taken a little bit of a rise here. Now they're dealing with their own issues when it comes to people flipping bottles of whiskey. Jack Daniel's Apple has had a big rise here. So are maybe just people not as interested in bourbon anymore because it doesn't come across as sophisticated as a whiskey? You're seeing a lot more videos on the internet about people buying this really expensive tequila. It used to be, cognac, right? That was the big thing, like Hennessy, and then it kind of fell into bourbon. You used to be able to watch like NFL interviews in coaches' houses, and they had these really awesome bottles on top, like Pappy and Blantons. But now it seems to be tequila. So is tequila propping up that sales market? Because yes, bourbon and whiskey is selling a lot of money, but the numbers speak for themselves. Brown-Forman are reporting losses. People are talking about distilleries laying off workers. So this is a really interesting time here to be a bourbon and whiskey drinker. So in my humble opinion, this is where I see the market going. I see whiskey is going to slowly cool off a little bit, kind of like craft beer. Craft beer slowly cooled off a little bit, and you've seen big craft beer breweries close down. Anchor Brewery in California, Boulder Beer Company, which is the second oldest one here in Colorado, shut its doors a year or so ago. And I think that will happen to some distilleries. Some not so good distilleries who have maybe just been getting by on the bourbon boom will close their doors. And some other big distilleries will have to go through some hard times. What we might see is some sales and some mergers. That is kind of how these conglomerate companies kind of make their way through it. Maybe we might see some overseas interests buy into different distilleries. That might happen again. And in the next few years, it's going to be harder to find allocated whiskey for better prices, because liquor stores who are going to be struggling will either just sell it out the back door, or they're going to be charging a high premium because they need to get by. They're not going to be able to get by on their stocks and stocks of whiskey. They're going to have to get creative with it. And then through then, what we'll see is that it'll be harder to find. Maybe that may 25, 26, year 2027. But then we'll peer our heads out of the nuclear winter that is the whiskey nuclear winter. With all the stocks that we already have, we will make it. We will get through it together. And then prices on allocated whiskey will come down, because again, it won't be as sophisticated as it previously has been. Less people will be interested in it because it'll be harder to get, and because the market just feels a little bit ucky at times with people flipping whiskey. And with that, we will maybe be able to see Weller Antique 107 sitting on shelves again, foolproof. We might even see some special releases of Heaven Hill there as well, because you have to think that a lot of these major distilleries have ramped up production so much in these last few years. They're gonna have a lot of whiskey, because if this market continues to cool off, they are gonna have so much whiskey they won't know what to do with it. So it's gonna be, they'll probably be blending some like 12 to 15-year-old whiskey in like Elijah Craig small batch just to try to get it out. And hopefully that will make a good impact on that. So maybe at the end of this decade, normal service might resume. One can only hope. So hopefully you enjoyed today's video, a little bit of an opinion piece, a little bit about the statistics of where the market is right now. I know a lot of people do cover this on YouTube, and I think so they should. This is a really interesting topic here. But if you'd like to see more of this kind of style, please let me know. And again, think about the whiskey meetup here for the subscribers in Louisville, in Kentucky at Dock Crows at 3 o'clock. You should definitely come if you're in that area. I would love to chat with some of you folks there. Also, consider the charity raffle that we're having. All the money goes to St. Jude. There's a small card fee for a square. That's about it. Putting up a lot of my own bottles, and a lot of the money that we get monetized for and sponsorships are going there as well. As we say on this channel, as we drink through the world's whiskeys one glass at a time, thank you all for watching.